On January 15, 1947, as the morning sun illuminated the quiet streets of Los Angeles with its golden glow, Betty Bersinger strolled along the sidewalk accompanied by her skipping toddler. As they continued their walk, Bersinger's attention was drawn to an object lying ahead that initially appeared to be a store mannequin. However, as they drew nearer, she noticed that the figure was oddly contorted, separated at the midsection, with its top and bottom parts lying a bit more than a foot apart. The arms were positioned up alongside the head, while the legs were splayed. As Bersinger and her child approached the scene, the horrific reality became unmistakable, a scene far more sinister than initially perceived. The naked, lifeless body of a young woman lay sprawled across the grass next to the sidewalk. Her body had been mutilated, with cuts across her private parts, the hair having been manually removed. Her intestines had been removed, her eyes left open, and almost most macabrely, a huge grin had been sliced through her face, almost from ear to ear through her mouth. Upon autopsy, it would be found that due to bruising, this had been done while she was still alive. Her body had been meticulously staged for the first person to pass her by, and subsequently the police. The 22-year-old woman had been strikingly beautiful, with jet black hair and piercing blue eyes, a Hollywood hopeful following her dreams. Unfortunately, her fame was found through the enigmatic case of her death. She was dubbed the Black Dahlia, a story which would define an era of Hollywood noir and subsequently captivate the world to this very day, a case which remains a mystery. With suspects and theories, I leave the answer to you. Who do you think was the perpetrator of this unspeakable crime? Welcome to another episode of Sofa, Mocha, and Mystery. My name is Taya. This video has been done upon request from a follower. I hope you enjoy it. Amazingly, it's the first time I've researched or watched anything on the Black Dahlia, and it warrants the attention. I thought the Anthill Kids cult was the worst video I'd do. However, researching this case, my mouth fell open on more than one occasion. Due to YouTube policies and regulations, I'm not going to include crime scene photos, but a quick search online will offer you all you might want to see. The photos are graphic, be warned. On that note, let's begin. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29, 1924, in the Hyde Park neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts, as the third of 5 daughters to Cleo Alvin Short and Phoebe May Sawyer. In 1918, the Short family settled in Medford, Massachusetts. Elizabeth's father, Cleo Alvin Short, Jr., worked as a builder of miniature golf courses until the 1929 stock market crash decimated most of their savings. The family faced further hardship when, in 1930, Cleo Alvin's car was found abandoned on the Charleston Bridge, leading to the assumption that he had tragically taken his own life by jumping into the Charles River. Convinced of her husband's demise, Phoebe May Short moved her family into a small apartment and found a job as a bookkeeper to provide for her 5 daughters. Elizabeth Short herself suffered from bronchitis and severe asthma, prompting lung surgery at the age of 15. Doctors recommended periodic relocations to a milder climate to alleviate her respiratory issues, leading her to spend winters with family friends in Miami, Florida for the next 3 years. Having one less mouth to feed brought some reprieve to the financially strapped family. In her sophomore year, Elizabeth dropped out of high school, citing missing too much school due to her illness and struggling to maintain good grades as the reason. However, it aligns with her character that she wasn't fond of work and pictured herself above that of the girl next door. It seems like Elizabeth Short may have been relying on her looks to provide for her future, whether that being a married woman or one gracing the silver screen. In late 1942, Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe, received an unexpected letter. It was from Cleo Alvin, her presumed dead husband. He was alive and well, and had started a new life in California. Hearing that her father, whom she had not seen since she was 6 years old, was alive, Elizabeth decided to travel to California to reunite with him. However, before she made the trip, and whilst she was in Miami, Elizabeth met Major Matthew Gordon Jr., a pilot with the Flying Tigers who was stationed there. The two quickly fell in love. Although Matthew was soon deployed overseas, the couple continued their relationship through heartfelt letters. In one of these letters, Matthew proposed to Elizabeth, asking her to marry him upon his return. Overjoyed, she eagerly accepted. During this time, Elizabeth made her way up to Santa Barbara, California, where she briefly worked at the Post Exchange at Camp Cook Military Base. Elizabeth lived a transient existence, moving between jobs, of which she didn't have many, and frequently hustled to find places to stay. She was usually asked to leave within a matter of weeks. Rather than helping around the house, she would go out at night and sleep during the day. She also rarely contributed towards groceries or rent. She soon attempted to reconnect with her estranged father, but this reunion did not last long. Again, Elizabeth preferred to laze about than doing chores, cooking, or looking for a job. Tensions rose, prompting her to return to Santa Barbara in September 1943. Elizabeth, drawn to servicemen and men in uniform, often visited night spots and clubs where military personnel gathered. At the age of 19, she continued corresponding with Matthew, longingly awaiting his return. However, during an evening out, she was arrested for underage drinking, violating California's liquor law. To avoid facing charges in California, she agreed to return home, and Santa Barbara County probation authorities provided her with a ticket back to Medford. Elizabeth eagerly awaited Matthew's return home within a week, anticipating their upcoming marriage. However, her relationship with his family had deteriorated due to her repeated appeals for financial support. On August 22, 1945, Elizabeth received a telegram from Matthew's mother conveying the message, "Just received word from War Department that Matt killed in crash. Our deepest sympathy is with you." Following Matthew's death, Elizabeth reportedly fell into a cycle of heavy drinking and frequent nights out, consumed by heartbreak. Seeking a fresh start, the Hollywood hopeful spent the winter of 1945 on the East Coast before traveling to Florida, where she worked as a waitress in Miami Beach. In February 1946, she returned to Medford and took a job as a cashier at a local movie theater. However, by April 1946, she had moved back to California, this time to Hollywood. During the 9 months leading up to her death, Elizabeth lived a transient lifestyle, staying in various boarding houses and with different roommates. She spent several weeks at a hotel in Long Beach during the summer before returning to Hollywood. There, she initially shared a room in a private residence, then lived in an apartment with 7 other young women, and also stayed in several Hollywood hotels for short periods. Struggling to make ends meet, Elizabeth relied on her looks and charm to attract the attention of men. She frequently went out on dates, allowing suitors to buy her dinner, but is believed to have rarely engaged physically with them. On January 8, 1947, Robert Red Manley, a 25-year-old salesman and part-time saxophone player with a wife and 4-month-old child at home, drove to Pacific Beach in San Diego to pick up Elizabeth Short, a young woman he had met a month earlier and was apparently dating. Having enlisted in the Army in 1942, Red was discharged in 1945 due to a medical condition. The pair had kept in close contact, and when Elizabeth told him that she wanted to go to Berkeley to stay with her sister and needed to get to Los Angeles where she would meet her sister at the Biltmore Hotel, Red graciously offered to drive her. On January 8, Red drove Elizabeth from San Diego to Los Angeles, stopping at a roadside motel for the night. Despite having dinner and drinks together, according to Red, the night remained platonic, claiming that Elizabeth slept in a chair while he took the bed. He later testified to the police that he was using Elizabeth as some sort of test for his relationship and marriage. The next day, as they drove back to Los Angeles, Red noticed scratches on Elizabeth's arms. She claimed they were from a possessive boyfriend, but Red suspected she was lying. Despite her supposed fabrications, he didn't push the matter. It was also noted that Elizabeth bit her nails, was looking rather disheveled, and the mousy brown color of her roots were growing out. Once in Los Angeles, Elizabeth asked to check her luggage at the bus depot and then to be taken to the Biltmore Hotel, under the ruse of meeting her sister. In reality, she did not have any plans to meet her sister, and it seemed she was using the story to orchestrate her next move independently. Her decision to leave her bags at the bus depot instead of bringing to them a hotel further alludes to the fact that she may have had plans to stay elsewhere or meet someone else later. This move allowed her to remain mobile and potentially avoid suspicion or attention while she navigated her next steps in Los Angeles. Not wanting to leave her alone, Red waited with her in the hotel lobby for a few hours until he had to leave. Elizabeth assured him she would be fine and expected her sister any moment. After Red left around 6:30 p.m., Elizabeth exited the hotel and headed south down Olive Street, possibly toward the Crown Grill, a bar she frequented. The Crown Grill, known for its discreet clientele, could have been a refuge, but no one could confirm seeing her there that night. The last known sighting of Elizabeth Short was on exiting the Biltmore Hotel. After the discovery of Elizabeth Short's mutilated body, a media frenzy ensued. The investigation into Elizabeth's case quickly intensified. Investigators, news reporters, and the public were captivated by the horrors and unanswered questions surrounding the murder of the blue-eyed woman with jet black hair, who would soon be dubbed the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short was identified after her fingerprints were sent to the FBI, where they were on file from her 1943 arrest for underage drinking. Immediately following Elizabeth's identification, reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner contacted her mother, Phoebe Short, in Boston, under the pretense that her daughter had won a beauty contest. They only revealed the truth, that her daughter had been murdered, after extracting as much personal information as possible from Phoebe. The Examiner also offered to pay for Phoebe's airfare and accommodations to Los Angeles, purportedly to assist with the police investigation. However, this was a ruse to keep her away from police and other reporters,
ensuring the newspaper could maintain its exclusive story. Many newspapers sensationalized the case. One article described the black tailored suit Elizabeth was last seen wearing as a tight skirt and sheer blouse. This was when the media changed the name from the werewolf murder to the Black Dahlia. It is believed they chose the name Black Dahlia due to the film Blue Dahlia, which was popular at the time, and because she sometimes wore dahlias in her hair. The media painted her as an adventuress who prowled Hollywood Boulevard, labeling her a prostitute, lesbian, and sexual miscreant. Additional reports called the murder a sex fiend slaying. Not only was the victim savagely dismembered but also misjudged, whilst her mother faced merciless disregard.
Hundreds of people phoned in claiming to be her killer, wanting notoriety. The crime scene, and this case to this day, is perplexing. The medical examiner noted that her body had been cleanly bisected with precision, indicating the use of a sharp, thin-bladed instrument consistent with a surgeon's scalpel. The incision started from the abdomen and went through the invertebral disc between the second and third lumbar vertebrae. The precise nature of the bisection suggested the work of a professional, possibly someone trained in surgical procedures, though others speculated the involvement of a butcher. Police criminologist Ray Pinker supported the medical examiner's opinion, and later his findings were corroborated by a study he conducted with Dr. Snyder of the Michigan State Police. The autopsy findings revealed the cause of the death to be hemorrhage and shock from a concussion of the brain and lacerations of her face. It was further determined that the trauma to the head and face resulted from multiple blows using a blunt instrument. This indicated that prior to her death, her face had been sliced open into what's commonly referred to as the Glasgow smile, a grotesque clown-like smile permanently carved across the face, from ear to ear. The force of the blows had misaligned her eyes, suggesting a significant level of violence. Her body appeared to have been held for days, subjected to gruesome acts, and had been drained of blood, leaving her skin a ghostly shade of white. She had several cuts on her thigh and breasts, with almost her whole right breast having been cut off. Her intestines had been removed and then tucked beneath her buttocks. A piece of flesh with a rose tattoo imprinted on it was cut off her thigh and put inside her vagina, and her stomach contained feces, leading investigators to believe that she'd been forced to eat them before she was killed. Her wrists showed rope burns, suggesting she had been restrained. Ligature marks were observed on her ankles, wrists, and neck, along with superficial lacerations on her right forearm, left upper arm, and the lower left side of her chest. It was quickly concluded that due to the absence of any blood at the scene, the crime had been committed elsewhere, and that the body was then transported to the empty lot on Norton Avenue. With no identification found, the victim was initially listed as Jane Doe No. 1. Among the evidence retrieved at the scene of the crime was a paper cement bag with small traces of what appeared to be water-diluted blood. This bag, clearly visible in photographs, was found just 6 inches from Elizabeth's outstretched right hand. One detective speculated that it had been used to carry the 2 sections of the body from a parked car at the sidewalk's edge to the grassy lot. Police also noted tire prints at the curb near the body and a bloody heel print believed to be from a man's shoe.
However, later reports revealed that these crucial pieces of evidence were not properly secured or photographed by the detectives on the case. 6 days passed since Elizabeth Short's body was recovered when James Richardson, an editor for the Los Angeles Examiner, received an enigmatic phone call. The caller, claiming responsibility for Elizabeth's death, commended the newspaper's coverage of the murder and pledged to send Elizabeth's belongings to Richardson's office. During that same week, on January 24, a U.S. postal worker stumbled upon a suspicious manila envelope addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner. Inside were Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, social security card, photographs, and an address book missing several pages with Mark Hansen inscribed on the cover. Her gold watch, a gift from Major Matthew Gordon, was also included. Enclosed was a message crafted from newspaper and magazine clippings stating, "Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers. Here are Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." All items in the envelope had been meticulously cleansed with gasoline to obliterate fingerprints. 2 days later, a handwritten note arrived at the Los Angeles Examiner's offices reading, "Here it is. Turning in Wednesday, January 29, 10 a.m. Had my fun at police. Black Dahlia Avenger." The note included a location believed by authorities to be where the killer would appear on the specified date and time. However, when law enforcement waited there on January 29, no one arrived. The same day, around 1 p.m., another note made of magazine clippings reached the Examiner. It declared, "Have changed my mind. You would not give me a square deal. Dahlia killing was justified." No further correspondence was received. Despite over 60 confessions, none yielded sufficient evidence for conviction. The killer's identity remained elusive. During the investigation into the Black Dahlia murder, a disturbing incident involving a hotel room and Leslie Dillon emerged. On the morning of January 15, 1947, when Elizabeth Short's body was discovered, the owners of the Astor Motel in Los Angeles reported finding one of their rooms covered in blood and fecal matter, indicating a violent incident had taken place. Leslie Dillon, a bellhop with a background as a mortician's assistant, was connected to this incident. Despite the room's horrific state, Dillon cleaned it without notifying the authorities. His decision to handle the situation discreetly was likely influenced by a previous encounter with the law, which made him wary of attracting the police investigation. Dillon's actions inadvertently erased critical evidence that could have provided significant leads in the investigation. Following the discovery of the disturbing scene at the Astor Motel, Leslie Dillon found himself under intense scrutiny by law enforcement. He was promptly brought in for questioning regarding his involvement in the incident and any potential ties to Elizabeth Short's murder. Dillon's background as a mortician's assistant and his suspicious activities in cleaning the room raised suspicions amongst investigators. During interrogations, Dillon maintained his innocence, claiming he had merely been performing his duties as a conscientious employee. Despite persistent questioning, authorities could not establish a direct link between Dillon and Elizabeth's murder. Furthermore, forensic evidence failed to definitively connect him to the crime scene. As the investigation progressed, Dillon's alibi held up under scrutiny, and additional leads led detectives in different directions. Although Dillon's involvement in the incident at the Astor Motel remained a point of contention, the lack of concrete evidence led authorities unable to pursue charges against him. However, Dillon seemed to know a lot of details about the case which were not released to the public. He also aided the police by giving up a name of a potential suspect, Jeff Connors. Mark Hansen, the owner of the address book found in the packet, swiftly became a person of interest to the police. Hansen, a Danish immigrant and wealthy local figure known for owning nightclubs and theaters, had connections to Elizabeth Short, including staying at his home with friends. Anne Toth, Elizabeth's friend and roommate, informed investigators that Elizabeth had rebuffed sexual advances from Hansen prior to her death, raising suspicions about a potential motive for him to harm her. Despite these allegations, Hansen was eventually cleared of any involvement in the case. However, there might be more that meets the eye. An anonymous letter was sent to Dr. Joseph Paul de River, an esteemed police psychiatrist of the time. The letter encouraged Dr. de River to evaluate none other than Leslie Dillon, the bellhop who so meticulously cleaned up what had appeared to be a crime scene at the Astor Hotel. Through a series of clandestine conversations, Dillon disclosed details only the perpetrator would possess, including undisclosed specifics about the mutilation of the body. Among these revelations was the removal of the rose tattoo from Elizabeth's thigh, a detail known to Dillon, but not the public. Dr. de River then brought the case to the LAPD for further scrutiny, initially heralding Dillon as a prime suspect and generating significant attention. However, this declaration was abruptly retracted just 2 days later, casting doubt on the veracity of the investigation. Subsequently, it surfaced that the individual linked to the murder had ties to a prominent Hollywood figure with connections to the LAPD, speculated to be none other than Mark Hansen. This revelation initiated a disturbing cover-up, overshadowing the pursuit of justice for Elizabeth's murder, as the narrative shifted towards the circumstances surrounding her death, rather than identifying her killer. A lead investigator on the case may have deliberately overlooked Dillon's involvement due to his association with Hansen. This theory gains further traction with the testimony of Buzz Williams, the son of a former member of the LAPD's gangster squad. Williams revealed that his father and fellow officer Con Keller harbored suspicions about Dillon's role in Elizabeth's murder, believing him to be the orchestrator of the crime alongside Hansen and another individual named Jeff Connors. The narrative unfolds with intriguing details about Hansen's fixation on Elizabeth, her brief stay at his residence, and his jealousy seemingly being triggered by her rebuffing his advances and entertaining other suitors. It has been speculated that Hansen, frustrated by Elizabeth's resistance, may have ordered her elimination. To carry out this dark deed, Hansen allegedly turned to Leslie Dillon, a shadowy figure with a reputation in the criminal underworld. Dillon's criminal activities, including bootlegging, made him a fitting choice for Hansen's sinister plans. Dillon had been painted as a psychopath by Dr. Paul de River, capable of carrying out the gruesome murder orchestrated by Hansen. Central to this theory was the Astor Motel, where witnesses claimed to have seen Hansen, Dillon, and Elizabeth. The day following Elizabeth's disappearance, room 3 of the motel was discovered in a ghastly state, with traces of blood and feces littering the scene. Lest we not forget that feces was found in Elizabeth's stomach during the autopsy. Items resembling Elizabeth's clothing were found nearby, adding to the mounting evidence implicating Hansen and Dillon in her demise. Witnesses reported sightings of Hansen and Dillon at the motel around the time of Elizabeth's disappearance, further fueling speculation about their involvement. It has also been alleged that perhaps Elizabeth was aware of shady dealings between Hansen and Dillon, which could have added to the motivation to kill her. None of this information was brought forward to a judge or jury, and only seems to have been uncovered in the past decade due to meticulous analysis of case files by individuals who are still spellbound by this case. Due to the infamy of the Black Dahlia case, there have been numerous confessions over the years, with people longing for notoriety. During the initial investigation, police received 60 confessions, primarily from men. Since then, over 500 individuals have confessed to the crime, including some who weren't even born at the time of her death. Due to his close proximity to Elizabeth Short before her disappearance and being one of the last people to see her alive, Robert Red Manley was initially a primary suspect in the Black Dahlia case. Manley underwent extensive questioning by the Los Angeles Police Department, during which he provisioned a detailed account of his interactions with Elizabeth, including their time in San Diego, the drive to Los Angeles, and their parting at the Biltmore Hotel. To verify his statements, Manley agreed to take a polygraph test, which he passed, suggesting that he was truthful about his last interactions with Elizabeth. Police corroborated Manley's account through witness statements and other evidence, ultimately verifying his timeline and whereabouts during the crucial period. This left investigators to conclude that he was not involved in Elizabeth's murder. However, despite being ultimately cleared of any involvement, the ordeal exacted a heavy toll on Manley's personal life. His marriage faltered under the strain of the investigation, ultimately culminating in divorce as the pressure mounted. Tragedy struck the Manley family once again, with the untimely death of their son, Tommy. In a heart-wrenching turn of events, Tommy lost his life to a drowning accident in the family swimming pool in 1954. This devastating loss compounded the emotional burden already carried by Red Manley. At one stage, Manley had a nervous breakdown and was also hospitalized for mental health issues. Despite his clearance from suspicion, the scars of the investigation ran deep, casting a shadow over his later years. On January 16, 1986, almost 39 years to the day of the discovery of Elizabeth's body, a fatal fall from a building claimed the life of Red Manley. The proximity of his death to the anniversary of Elizabeth's murder serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring legacy of the case, forever entwined with Red Manley's story. It also raises questions as to whether his fall was really accidental. Walter Bailey, a reputable Los Angeles surgeon, emerged as a person of interest in the infamous Black Dahlia murder case due to several intriguing factors. Born in 1880, Bailey had a long and successful career in the medical field and was well respected in his community with no prior criminal record. The circumstances that brought him under suspicion included his proximity to the crime scene and his professional expertise. Bailey's daughter lived near the vacant lot where Elizabeth Short's mutilated body was discovered on January 15, 1947, prompting some to speculate about his potential involvement. Bailey's surgical background equipped him with the necessary skills to carry out the precise dismemberment observed in Elizabeth's murder. The nature of the cuts and the removal of organs suggested that the killer had advanced anatomical knowledge. Additionally, Bailey's estranged wife was reportedly friends with Phoebe Short, Elizabeth's mother, adding another layer of intrigue to this indirect personal connection. At the time of the murder, Bailey was suffering from a progressive neurological disorder, which some theorists suggest could have contributed to erratic or violent behavior. However, despite the circumstantial evidence, there was no direct proof linking Bailey to the murder, and he was never formally charged or arrested in connection with the case. Theories about Bailey's involvement resurfaced when Steve Hodel, a former LAPD detective, suggested that his father, George Hodel, another prominent suspect in the case, might have known Bailey and collaborated on the murder. This connection between the two suspects, however, remains speculative. Many investigators and historians remain skeptical about Bailey's involvement, as the theories connecting him to the crime are largely based on circumstantial evidence and conjecture rather than concrete proof. Perhaps the most interesting suspect is George Hodel. George Hodel Jr. was born on October 10, 1907, in Los Angeles, California, into a well-to-do family. From a young age, Hodel exhibited signs of prodigious intelligence. By the age of 9, his IQ was reported to be 186, a figure that placed him among the intellectual elites. His early brilliance was evident in his academic achievements, as he excelled in school and skipped multiple grades. Hodel's intellectual capabilities earned him entry into prestigious schools. He attended the South Pasadena High School, where he was known for his academic excellence and was involved in various intellectual pursuits. By the age of 14, Hodel entered the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, where he studied mathematics, a subject he excelled in due to his exceptional analytical mind. During his time at Caltech, Hodel developed a keen interest in the arts, particularly in music and literature. He was a talented pianist and an avid reader, exploring the works of classical composers and literary giants. His artistic inclinations were complemented by his fascination with surrealist and avant-garde art, leading him to associate with some of the most prominent figures in the Los Angeles art scene. His fascination with the arts and the work of one of his friends, Man Ray, integrates well into the plot of a scene of the Black Dahlia. After leaving Caltech, George Hodel pursued a career in medicine by enrolling in medical school at the University of California, San Francisco. He specialized in obstetrics and gynecology and eventually became a licensed physician. Hodel also focused on venereal diseases, opening a practice in Los Angeles that dealt with sexually transmitted infections. While he was not primarily a practicing surgeon, his medical expertise and knowledge of human anatomy contributed to suspicions about his involvement in the Black Dahlia murder due to the surgical precision observed in Elizabeth Short's mutilation. This background, coupled with his eccentric personality and questionable behavior, positioned Hodel as a key suspect in the infamous case. Hodel's personal life was as complex and multifaceted as his professional one. He married Dorothy Anthony, with whom he had a son, Duncan. However, their marriage was short-lived, and Hodel's subsequent relationships were marked by tumult and scandal. He later married Dorothy Huston Hodel, a fashion model, with whom he had 4 children, including Steve Hodel, who would later accuse him of multiple murders. In total, Hodel had 11 children by different women. In the 1940s, Hodel became deeply involved in the Los Angeles avant-garde art scene. He was a close friend of photographer Man Ray and associated with other surrealist artists. His home, designed by famed architect Lloyd Wright, son of Frank Lloyd Wright, became a gathering place for intellectuals, artists, and bohemians. The house itself, known as the Sowden House, with its distinctive Mayan revival style, became a symbol of Hodel's eccentric and enigmatic personality. Hodell's life was marred by numerous criminal allegations and scandals. In 1945, he was suspected in the death of his secretary, Ruth Spaulding. Although never charged, the circumstances of her death, an alleged overdose, raised questions, particularly since she was reportedly about to reveal financial improprieties in Hodell's billing practices. One of the most disturbing episodes in Hodell's life was the accusation of incest and sexual abuse brought by his daughter, Tamar Hodell, in 1949. Tamar testified that her father had sexually molested her and forced her to participate in orgies. The trial was sensational, drawing widespread media attention. Despite the serious nature of the allegations, George Hodell was acquitted, largely due to the testimony of family friends and the discrediting of Tamar's character. Despite multiple witnesses to these atrocities taking stand, they testified against Tamar being blackmailed by Hodell or relying on him financially. The most infamous chapter in George Hodell's life began posthumously when his son, Steve Hodell, a retired LAPD homicide detective, accused him of being the Black Dahlia killer. George Hodell's death in 1999 marked the beginning of a startling revelation for his son, Steve Hodell. Following his father's passing, Steve inherited a collection of personal belongings, including photographs, writings, and various documents. Among these items, Steve discovered a photograph of a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Elizabeth Short. This discovery deeply disturbed Steve and prompted him to investigate further into his father's past. Intrigued and unsettled by the photograph, Steve began to delve into George Hodell's life during the 1940s, the period when the Black Dahlia murder took place. As he dug deeper, Steve uncovered a series of disturbing connections. He discovered that his father had lived in close proximity to the location where Elizabeth Short's body was found. Additionally, George Hodell's medical training and knowledge of surgical procedures was eerily consistent with the precise and clinical manner in which Elizabeth's body had been mutilated. Knowing that his father was a follower of the arts, he also noted that the pose of the Black Dahlia was strikingly similar to a photo taken by Man Ray. Steve mused that perhaps this was his father's own sordid way of creating avant-garde art. Through his research, Steve learned that his father had been a prime suspect in the original Black Dahlia investigation. The LAPD had wiretapped George Hodell's home in 1950, capturing a conversation where he allegedly said, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead." This chilling statement, along with other evidence, suggested a deeper involvement in the crime than previously understood. As Steve Hodell pieced together these clues, he became increasingly convinced that his father was not only responsible for the Black Dahlia murder, but may also have been involved in other heinous crimes. His investigation culminated in the publication of his findings, which sparked renewed interest and debate about one of America's most infamous cold cases. Steve's work has shed new light on the dark complexities of his father's life, suggesting that George Hodell might have been hiding a sinister double life behind his outward success and charm. Steve also began to explore connections between his father and other unsolved murders. He believed that George Hodell's extensive travels and periods of residence in different countries could have facilitated a series of crimes similar to the Black Dahlia murder. Steve noted that the handwriting on a note sent to the police in 1947, purportedly from the Black Dahlia killer, matched his father's handwriting, adding another layer of suspicion. However, Handwriting experts later examined the note and determined that the handwriting was not a match. Additionally, photo analysis specialists examined the photographs in George Hodell's possession, suspecting they could be linked to Elizabeth Short. Their findings revealed an 85% certainty that the images were not of Elizabeth, casting further doubt on Hodell's connection to the case. Despite these conflicting analyses, Steve remained determined to uncover the truth about his father's potential connection to the Black Dahlia murder and other unsolved crimes. In the wake of the various scandals and suspicions, George Hodell fled the United States multiple times. He lived in Hawaii before moving to the Philippines in 1950, where he resided for the next 4 decades. During his time in the Philippines, Hodell continued to practice medicine and lived a relatively quiet life, though his past continued to haunt him. Hodell returned to the United States in the early 1990s, spending his final years in San Francisco, where he died in 1999. George Hodell remains one of the most enigmatic and controversial figures in the annals of American crime history. His life, marked by intellectual brilliance, artistic passion, and dark allegations, continues to captivate and disturb. Whether guilty of the crimes attributed to him or not, Hodell's story is a haunting reminder of the complexities and contradictions that can reside within a single individual. Some speculate that the murder of Elizabeth Short may have been orchestrated by surrealist artists as a real-life enactment of the game known as the Exquisite Corpse. In this game, participants take turns drawing on separate sections of a folded piece of paper without revealing their contributions to others. Once completed, the paper is unfolded to reveal a collaborative creation. It is theorized that numerous artists participated in Elizabeth's murder, each making unique contributions to the mutilations on her body. This speculation is further tied to George Hodell, with his keen interest in the surrealist art movement and association with several prominent artists of the time. With numerous suspects and theories, the truth of Elizabeth Short's murder remains elusive. Was it a random act or a calculated crime? Did one person commit the deed or were multiple involved? Share your thoughts below on the puzzling story of the Black Dahlia.